Have you ever wondered how far someone would go to erase the one person who built their future, just to impress strangers? My name is Leah. I'm 33, and I run a mobile mechanic service in Sacramento. It's not glamorous work. I don't wear heels to meetings or shake hands in boardrooms. My uniform is grease-stained coveralls, and my office is the driver's seat of a van filled with tools. But this business, I built it. Every invoice, every scraped knuckle, every early morning, under a leaking carport, it's all mine. And I'm proud of that. Pride, however, isn't something my family ever shared. My younger sister Camille, 5 years my junior, has always been the polished one. Ivy League law school, designer handbags, perfect posture and carefully chosen words. She was the dream daughter, the golden ticket. And I was the one who made sure the lights stayed on, the one who paid her tuition when our mother couldn't, the one who stayed up rebuilding engines while Camille built her reputation. Never resented her. At least, not until the day I found out she had rewritten our story. Not just omitted me, but buried me. And all for a lie she thought would win her the life she always wanted. I wasn't always the kind of woman who carried a wrench in one hand and payroll in the other. There was a time I didn't even have a roof over my head. At 19, I was sleeping in the back seat of a borrowed car, working nights at a gas station just to afford instant noodles and engine oil. My dad had passed when I was 17, and my mother, for all her sharp opinions and strong tea, wasn't much of a safety net. She adored Camille, doted on her like a porcelain doll. But me? I was just the girl who fixed things when they broke, quietly, reliably, without thanks. What saved me, oddly enough, was that same borrowed car. I rebuilt its failing transmission with a borrowed manual and shaky hands, and someone took notice. A local mechanic offered me part-time work. One job led to another, and eventually, I scraped together enough to start Leah's mobile auto repair. Just me, a van, and the certainty that no one was coming to save me. Camille, on the other hand, had a runway carved out for her. Brilliant, beautiful, and always one step away from the next scholarship, the next mentor, the next polished introduction. When she got into law school out east, Columbia no less, my mother wept with joy. But behind that joy was a question no one wanted to ask out loud. How would we afford it? So I offered. Quietly, like always. I redirected the money I'd been saving for my own expansion, tools, permits, maybe even a storefront, and sent it. Instead to New York. Semester after semester. Rent, books, fees. I paid for it all. My mother thanked me once, briefly, then changed the subject to Camille's grades. Camille? She sent sporadic texts, quick thank yous when prompted, and glowing photos from rooftop mixers I could never dream of attending. Still, I told myself it was worth it. That someday, when she passed the bar and made partner, she'd look back and see me, not with pity, not as the sister who worked with her hands, but as the reason she made it. I held on to that belief for years, through engine fires, bounced, checks, and long nights where my only company was the hum of machinery. I never needed applause. I just wanted to belong in her success story. But I would soon learn. I never even made it into the footnotes. The unraveling didn't come in the form of a dramatic confrontation or a loud argument. It was quiet, almost too quiet. That Thanksgiving, I'd just finished a brutal day of service calls. My last appointment had me crawling under a client's ancient Ford Explorer in the freezing dusk, and by the time I made it home, I was exhausted, but content. The shop was closed for the holiday, my team had their bonuses, and I'd picked up a bottle of Syrah from a small vineyard up north to bring to the family dinner. I even wore the nice cardigan my aunt had sent me last Christmas, the one I usually saved for weddings or awkward networking events. But when I walked into my apartment and checked my phone, I saw the first odd thing. No messages. Not from my mom, not from Camille. No address reminder, no we're starting early heads up. I called my mother out of instinct, and she picked up after several rings. "Oh, Leah," she said, surprised. "You're calling?" "I'm on my way," I told her, juggling my keys in the wine bottle. "Do you need anything? Should I bring pie?" Silence. Just a few seconds. But in that pause, something shifted. "Leah," she said carefully, "Camille's fiancé's parents are here. They flew in from Connecticut last night. Very formal. People." Camille thought, maybe this year we'd keep it small. Just them. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I just stood there in my doorway, jacket half zipped, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. "So I'm not invited?" "That's not what I said. It's just, appearances matter, and you know how Camille is under pressure. They're a very polished family. They've funded campaigns. They belong to clubs." "Are you saying I embarrass you?" I asked. My voice level. "No, Leah," she said quickly. "It's just for one evening. We'll do something together next weekend." I hung up before she could finish. I didn't throw the wine, didn't cry, didn't even sit down. I just stood there staring at the wall like I could will it to crack open and give me a better version of reality. One where I wasn't expendable. But deep down, I already knew. I hadn't just been forgotten. I'd been deliberately removed. And I had no idea just how far Camille had gone to keep me invisible. The next morning, as I sipped coffee that had gone cold too fast, I got a message from my cousin Talia. Just 3 words. "You doing okay?" I replied with a simple question. "Mark." Her response came fast and hard. "Camille told her fiancé's parents you're estranged, said you've had substance issues in the past and don't keep in touch with the family." I stared at the screen, heart punching against my ribs. Estranged? Substance issues? I hadn't touched a drop of anything stronger than sleep tea in years. And if working 80-hour weeks and sending tuition payments counted as being out of touch, then sure, I was the ghost she painted me to be. Talia sent a screenshot. It was from a private post on Camille's wedding prep blog, something I'd never been invited to follow. She was posing with her fiancé, Nathan, and his parents in front of a marble fireplace. The caption read, "So grateful for the love of Nathan's family, especially with my own journey being so complicated." #chosen family. That phrase snapped something loose in me. I had chosen her for years. Chosen to carry her when she couldn't pay rent. Chosen to wire tuition money on Christmas Eve. Chosen to believe I mattered. But she'd chosen to erase me. The more I looked, the deeper it got. Camille had curated an entire identity online that excluded me entirely. No pictures from childhood that included both of us. No mention of the years I covered her rent in New York when her scholarship didn't stretch. No sign that I existed at all. And the kicker? Camille had told Nathan's family she was the first in our bloodline to graduate college. Not just law school, college. My associate degree in diesel. Mechanics apparently didn't count. I didn't even know where to put the anger. It didn't feel explosive. It felt surgical, cold, focused. I started going through old emails, receipts, transfer confirmations. I found birthday cards I'd mailed her during law school, ones where she'd written back, thanking me for always, believing in her. What changed? Or had I always just been a prop she intended to retire the moment she didn't need me? By Friday, I'd stopped sleeping. Every text I didn't send built up in my chest like rust. Talia offered to confront Camille for me. I told her not to. This wasn't going to be another family drama that got talked over at a brunch table and then swept under a rug woven out of shared DNA. Camille had made her choices. She wanted the kind of story you could print on wedding invitations. Neat, pretty, upper middle class. And I didn't fit. That weekend, I quietly unfollowed Camille. On everything. It felt absurdly small at first. Just a tap, a click. But it felt like peeling off a label that had never really belonged to me. sister, supporter, silent witness. I wasn't going to play the background in a version of her life where I was, either pitied or ignored, and yet the part that truly cut wasn't her lies. It was that no one, not even our mother, had thought to stand up and say, "That's not right." Silence from a family can sometimes be louder than the betrayal itself. It was then I knew this wasn't just about Camille. This was about what I'd allowed all these years, to be the one who gives without asking, who serves without being seen. And that was about to change. The universe has a strange way of showing its hand when you least expect it. A week after Thanksgiving, I got a service request from a new client, name on the form, Nathan Bellamy. I didn't think much of it at first. The car was a high-end, European model, one of those that practically sneers at dust. I assumed it would be another lawyer or tech exec with money to burn and no time to bother with dealerships. The address on the request was a luxury apartment complex downtown, just off Capitol Mall. I pulled up, clipboard in hand, expecting the usual sterile small talk and card swipe. But when the elevator doors opened and I stepped into the marble-tiled lobby, I froze. Sitting on the edge of a leather lounge chair was Nathan, Camille's fiancé. I recognized him instantly from her engagement photos. Crisp haircut, effortless charm, the kind of man who'd never been ghosted by a utility bill. He stood up, all smiles. "Leah, right? Thanks for coming on short notice." I forced a smile, swallowing every instinct to turn around. "Of course. I'll just need your key fob and a few minutes to run diagnostics." He handed me the keys, then laughed softly. "Camille told me you run a mobile shop. That's pretty impressive, especially considering what she went through growing up." I blinked. "Sorry?" He leaned against the counter. Her mom struggled so much. Single parent. Camille basically got herself through school. You know how hard that must have been. No real family support, and she still made it to Columbia. "She's incredible." My mouth went dry. I nodded faintly and turned toward the parking garage, mind spinning. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I replayed his words like a recording that refused to stop. No real family support. That wasn't just a lie. That was theft. Camille hadn't just hidden me. She'd rewritten her entire past. She'd made herself a self-made woman, rising from imaginary ashes, and buried me somewhere in that fiction. I opened a folder on my laptop I hadn't touched in years. Camille tuition. Every transfer. Every email chain. Every scanned receipt. From university bookstores. Even voice memos from her asking for help, for extensions, for more time. I had them all, and that's when it hit me. She hadn't just deleted me from her life for vanity. She'd done it to elevate herself. Her entire relationship with Nathan, her place in his world, rested on a foundation of curated nobility. How she overcame a rough background, how she succeeded without help. It wasn't just about pride. It was a brand. Camille was selling a version of herself that was aspirational, digestible, whitewashed of blue collars and busted knuckles, and I realized I wasn't the secret. I was the liability. That next morning I sat at my desk staring at Camille's contact name. I could have called, I could have screamed, but something told me she'd only spin it again. What mattered now wasn't confrontation, it was clarity. This wasn't about being excluded from a dinner. This was about being airbrushed out of existence. And worse, about someone else cashing in on my silence. I closed my laptop and walked outside into the sharp winter air. I didn't have a plan yet, but I had the most dangerous thing a betrayed person can possess: proof. And for the first time in years, I felt the first flicker of something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time: power. I spent the next week walking around with a storm inside me that had no place to land. Every job I did, every oil change, or alternator replacement, felt like background noise to the decisions swirling in my head. I had the receipts, the voice notes, the bank transfers. I had the truth, undeniable and cold. But what would I do with it? Out her to Nathan? Humiliate her in front of her polished new world? Or just let it go and try to find some peace on my own? There's a kind of paralysis that comes with betrayal. Not the moment it hits, but the slow realization that you now hold power over someone who once held power over you. I had never asked Camille for recognition, let alone repayment. And now I found myself holding the very facts that could shatter the pristine little empire she'd built on my labor. At night, I'd lie awake thinking of the conversations I'd never had the courage to force. The times I'd stayed silent at family dinners when she talked about finding her own way. The times our mother would beam and say, "Camille's always been independent," while I bit my tongue and tried to ignore the second job I was working to keep that illusion alive. Then something shifted. One evening, after a long day and a particularly difficult service call where a client had belittled me for being a woman in a man's trade, I came home to find an old voicemail from Camille. It was from 4 years ago. She was crying, asking for help with housing after a scholarship payment had fallen through. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she had said. "You're the only reason I'm even still in school." I played that message 5 times. Then I saved it to a folder named Truth. A few days later, I had lunch with my friend Marcella, who works in employment law. She's tough as nails and allergic to sugarcoating. I told her everything. Laid it bare like an engine block needing repair. She didn't flinch. "Leah," she said calmly, sipping her coffee, "this isn't just a lie. It's theft. She used your life to build hers. You're not trying to destroy her. You're just stopping her from continuing to profit off your silence. There's a difference." I let that sit with me. Marcella was right. This wasn't vengeance. It was self-respect with documentation. Still, I didn't act, not immediately. I needed to be sure that whatever I chose, I could live with. So I went back to work, but I also started quietly organizing. I compiled files, printed statements, screenshots, dates, emails with subject lines like tuition emergency and need help again. I labeled everything meticulously. Not because I wanted to hand it to Nathan just yet, but because I needed to see it all laid out in one place, to prove to myself that I hadn't imagined the weight I'd carried. And when I finally saw it all, spread across my dining table, it hit me like a second betrayal. I'd given up so much: time, money, years of my own dreams. Not for a sister, but for a stranger who never saw me as more than a stepping stone. That realization didn't crush me. It sharpened me. This wasn't about taking something from Camille. It was about reclaiming what I had allowed her to steal: my voice, my story, my place in the truth. And this time, I wasn't asking to be acknowledged. I was preparing to be undeniable. The reveal came quietly, not with fireworks, but with the precision of a scalpel. By then, the wedding invitations had gone out. Camille and Nathan were set to marry at a private vineyard outside Napa. Picturesque, exclusive, dripping with the kind of curated elegance you only see in bridal magazines. I hadn't received an invitation, of course, not even a courtesy text. But I saw the photos Talia forwarded me from Instagram. Camille in a white silk gown during a tasting event, Nathan smiling beside her, the caption reading, "Can't wait to start forever with the people who matter most." That phrase landed like a stone, the people who mattered. I waited a few days. Then, with hands steady and heart oddly calm, I slid the envelope into the mailbox. Inside was a simple letter addressed to Nathan. Not venomous, not dramatic, just a quiet detailing of the truth. Attached were photocopies of tuition transfers spanning 4 years. A printed transcript of Camille's voicemail from 2019, screenshots of her emails requesting help, and a final note in my handwriting. "You deserve to know the truth about the person you're about to build a life with. I'm not asking for anything, just clarity." Her story isn't hers alone. She borrowed it and buried the person who paid for it. No signature, no return address. I wasn't looking for credit. I was looking for correction. For 3 days, nothing happened. No messages, no calls. I assumed he'd dismissed it, or worse, shown it to Camille and laughed. But on the 4th day, Camille's wedding planner posted that the event had been postponed due to unforeseen circumstances. Her engagement photos vanished from Instagram. The blog went dark, I heard from Talia a week later. Nathan called off the wedding, she said in a whisper, as if Camille might somehow hear her over the phone line. He left, packed his things and moved out. Didn't say much. Just told Camille he felt lied to, that everything about her story felt rehearsed. I didn't feel triumph. No joy, just stillness. A kind of internal quiet that only comes when the scales finally balance, even if only for a moment. Camille didn't reach out. Neither did my mother. But I didn't need them to. I wasn't looking for apologies. I'd stopped craving that long ago. 2 days after the cancellation, I got a text from an unknown number. No name, just a short sentence. I hope you're satisfied. I didn't reply. Not because I was trying to be cruel, but because I was done speaking into voids that never listened. The public unraveling of Camille's lie wasn't a scene. There were no tears on doorsteps or screaming phone calls. It was quieter than that. Colder. Like watching a glass sculpture crack along the lines you always knew were there. But what mattered more than the fallout was the freedom. For the first time, I no longer felt like I was orbiting someone else's spotlight. I had stepped out of her frame, and maybe, just maybe, I had finally reclaimed my own. The fallout came not with rage, but with whispers. At first I thought I might be spared the drama. No one said anything directly, not even a text from my mother. But then the calls started trickling in. An uncle I hadn't spoken to in years left a voicemail, voice tight with disapproval. Whatever happened between you and Camille, you should have handled it privately. Family doesn't air its dirty laundry. Ah, there it was, the old script. Auntie. Celeste sent me a long message on Facebook, full of flowery words about forgiveness, about how Camille was just under a lot of pressure and wanted to make a good impression. She ended it with, "You've always been the strong one. Surely you could have turned the other cheek." The strong one. That was always the job I never applied for but kept being assigned. Strong enough to pay the bills. Strong enough to be excluded. Strong enough to be forgotten and never raise my voice about it. And still, the one who got blamed when I finally drew the line. I didn't reply. Not to them. Not to anyone trying to reframe the situation as a personal attack or a sisterly spat, because this wasn't about a ruined wedding. It was about a pattern, years of being useful but never visible. What surprised me, though, were the quiet acknowledgments. Talia came by with coffee one morning and said, without fanfare, "You did what nobody else ever had the guts to." My cousin Jordan, whom I hadn't seen since high school, messaged out of the blue to say he'd always wondered why Camille acted like she was an only child. Even those tiny moments of truth felt like breath after being underwater. As for Camille, she disappeared. Socially, at least. Her accounts went private. Her wedding registry vanished. I don't know where she lives now, or if she's still working at the same firm. And honestly, I haven't tried to find out. I kept working, focused on my crew. We landed a new contract with a city fleet and finally moved into a proper garage space downtown. I painted the walls myself. Gray with clean white lines, not a trace of erasure left. It wasn't revenge that kept me going. It was the quiet promise I made to myself. Never again would I be the background to someone else's carefully edited story. About 3 weeks after everything settled into that eerie silence, the kind that follows a long storm, I received a letter. A real one. Handwritten. Folded neatly into a pale blue envelope with my name written in cursive across the front. I recognized the handwriting instantly. My grandmother, Miriam. She's never been loud, never one to interfere or take sides in family matters. But she's also never been blind. She lives in a small house outside Yuba City, too far to visit often. But we talk now and then. Holiday calls, the occasional birthday. What I didn't expect was her to weigh in on what had just happened. Inside the envelope was a single page, cream-colored and creased at the corners. Her handwriting wavered slightly, but the words were clear. My dear Leah, I may not know all the details, but I know this. When someone finds the strength to speak truth after being silenced, others will often mistake it for cruelty. Don't let them. What you did took courage, not spite. You've always given more than you've received, and now you've finally given something to yourself. Dignity. I'm proud of you. Not just for what you've built with your hands, but for what you've reclaimed with your heart. There was nothing else. No unnecessary flourishes, just that quiet, steady voice I'd known since I was a child, reminding me of something I had nearly forgotten, that being seen, truly seen, matters. I held that letter for a long time, longer than I expected. It felt like someone had finally put a name to everything I'd carried but never said aloud. She didn't need to choose sides. She just chose me. And in a family where I'd spent years feeling optional, that meant everything. Leah's story isn't one of revenge. It's a quiet reckoning. It's what happens when someone who's been overlooked, underestimated, and edited out finally decides to stop shrinking to fit the comfort of others. In a world that often rewards image over integrity, she chose truth. Not the kind shouted from rooftops, but the kind backed by evidence, clarity, and self-respect. What Camille built was a narrative. What Leah reclaimed was her reality. There's a deeper truth here about the roles we're asked to play within families. The strong one, the silent one, the provider, and how quickly those roles become cages. Leah broke that mold, not to punish someone else, but to finally exist on her own terms. Because real love, familial or otherwise, doesn't require invisibility. It doesn't ask you to disappear to make someone else shine. So now, a question for you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone, not out of anger, but out of clarity? Let us know in the comments. Your story might be what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story moved you, subscribe for more real narratives that remind us all. You don't have to stay silent to be kind. Sometimes truth is the kindest thing of all.